Hey yo, what it do, what it do? It's your boy Q, and we got just one more week left of the Shift Summer League, baby. At least when it comes to our regular season play, the league play that we all have come to love and enjoy that we've missed oh so much. And we've been incredibly busy over here on the channel, man, so we aren't going to do like last week where we kind of broke down all of the action. That was only for week one. This is the last week, so we're going to do this week is kind of look at who's in contention as far as playoffs, see how they've done so far, what the rest of their schedule looks like, and kind of talk about what our predictions are for the final week. Who are going to be the 6 teams for both NA and EU that advance into that playoffs for the Shift Summer League. I actually just got done doing it for the podcast. It's going to be releasing, of course, on Tuesday here. So if you're wanting to see the whole episode as far as the podcast, you're going to have to come back and check that thing out. But I wanted to get this thing out because I realized we hadn't got to do anything just quite yet for the Shift Summer League. And we got a busy day. I mean, even here, just a couple hours, we got another watch party for North American BCT Challenger Circuit as well. You know, we do a lot of esports over here. So if you enjoy the vibe, y'all already know what to do, man. But let's go ahead and get down and do what it do, baby. Let's get down and talk a little bit here about the Shift Summer League. You know what? I guess let's go ahead and get started off with the Shift Summer League. It's the final week of league play, final week of regular season action. So last chance for teams to kind of work for their seeding as well as for qualifying or not qualifying. And we'll be doing watch parties for the 2 regions as well tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday. EU starting at 1 p.m. Eastern time. We've also got NA starting at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be doing our challengers at 4 p.m. throughout the week and kind of fitting in games around that here as well. And I figured, you know what? Since of our videos that we did for week number 1, the NA one did get a little bit better reception, we'll start there. I mean, plus, I mean, NA on top, right? We're the champions, baby. And I mean, if you do want to tune in just for the EU portion review of the Shift Summer League, I'll go ahead and always have those things, of course, marked down below if you guys are listening to this thing over here on YouTube. I'm also going to have it chatted out over in the description of our podcast platforms as well. But not only that, I think NA is going to be a little bit easier to go through here as well. Because if we're being real, when we look at NA as far as the bracket here on your screen, it kind of tells the story, right? We're more than likely this week mostly just going to be playing for seeding. Yeah, you have OG just outside of that top 6, sitting at 5 and 7. But I mean, their remaining schedule is pretty tough, right? I mean, Fun, Pirates on a Boat, Incorrect. They're all sitting down there at 8th through 10th, unless they miraculously turn things around and basically everything falls in line for the teams that they need to be able to pass up. They're probably all out, right? But I mean, for OG, even when you look at their remaining schedule, right? I mean, they got Shopify Rebellion, they've got RMC, they've got SSG, they've got G2, they've got Gen.G. Basically, the only easy matchup, and I put easy in quotes, and of course, this is 10 of the best teams when it comes to North American Rocket League. The easiest one would be their last matchup, which is Fun, so it's not like you can really build up any momentum before or after that matchup as well, right? So, I mean, when you look at for them, in the 6 games that they do have left, they went 1-5 during the first iteration, only beating Fun. Again, Fun being that last team that they are going to play in in day number 6 on Wednesday. So it's going to be rough for them if they're going to qualify. It doesn't seem like OG is in a position right now, unless they completely turn around the brand of ball that they're playing. I just quite frankly don't see it happening. But when we talk about our more probable teams, right? The teams that are currently, you know, sitting in that 1 through 6 spot, let's go ahead and start with Dignitas, man. I mean, oh, how the mighty have fallen. When we think back to the last video that we did after week number 1, they were sitting at 4 and 2, sitting in 2nd place. Now sitting down there at 6 and 6 after going 2 and 4 last week. They should be able to secure some wins this week. They've got some wins. They're talking about, you know, Poab and Fun, and they did technically also beat G2 the last time that they did square off against them. But, you know, can lightning strike twice? That's the sort of deal that you have to ask yourself when you're going against a team like G2 in league play like this. But you could also kind of make the same sort of arguments for the teams that you're playing that you did lose to last time around if you're Dignitas as well. So it feels like Dignitas controls their destiny. But at 6 and 6, with everyone else kind of sitting up in that 8 and 4 spot, it does feel like that if Dignitas is going to advance. More than likely, they're just only going to be advancing in that number 6 spot. Unless they like really turn things around and a team like Shopify and SpaceStation really fall off. And look, I know I only called out 2 of the 4 teams that are 8-4. I just don't see G2 and Gen.G falling off that hard. Gen.G already had their rough week. I would argue in G2 sense they haven't really had that standout week here yet, so that might even be this coming week for week number 3 of that Shift Summer League play. But yeah, we got 4 teams, man, locked up at that 8-4. You know, we're talking Gen.G, SSG, G2, Shopify. And I guess we'll start with the top of the 4 teams. So we'll start technically that number 2 spot. Gen.G, they went 5-1 last week with their only loss being to Dignitas. And in that game against Dignitas, I mean, all the games that they lost were only 1-goal games. Some would argue that it was one of the closest games that we had. I would say probably in that last block. Especially for it being a 3-1, right? Definitely a lot closer than you expect for an only 4-game series. They got a tough road. They don't necessarily have the easiest road. I feel like saying they got a tough road, though, is kind of underselling what everyone's. I mean, everyone really has a tough road of these last top 5 teams that have what they've got left, right? But they got games against G2, Fun, RMC, Shopify, OG, and Incorrect. They'll need to make sure they capitalize on the games that they are supposed to win, though, right? If they're going to want to get themselves like a really good spot for the playoffs. G2, of course, currently sitting in that 8-4 spot. They're up 3 spots technically, but that was because they kind of stumbled in day number 3, heading into day number 4. I mean, they've got a tough-ish remaining schedule, right? I mean, G2 does have teams like Gen.G to start things off. I feel like that should be a really, really good game. Last time those 2 squared off against one another was actually on Tuesday last week. It was in the second round of Tuesday's game instead of the first round. Both of these teams are going to be able to come into that. There's no one coming off of any momentum. No one, haven't had played easier competition than the other. It's the first game of the day for those two teams, and I'm definitely going to want to make sure that I'm tuning in for that on Tuesday. But even after that, I mean, they've got SSG. Yeah, you've got POAB to round things out on day 5, but I would even say POAB isn't necessarily a walkover either. Same thing you could say for OG, although OG is on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoffs. And then you still have RMC as well as Dignitas again one more time to round out day number 6. So G2 also obviously doesn't have the easiest of roads. It feels like G2 probably secure. Again, I feel like all of our top 6 are secure where they're at. The question for G2 is how strong can they finish and what kind of spot can they get themselves for playoffs. When we think about the playoff format, right? Only 6 teams make it. And you don't want to get locked into that number 5 or 6 spot because you lose that opportunity to have that double elimination, right? You've already starting on your last limb. So for G2, you got to make sure you finish strong this week. You have some tough opposition. I feel like for them, their week starts with how good they look in the Gen.G game. Even if they lose against Gen.G, if it's another 5-game banger where it's back and forth, then you're not too concerned. But if you come out and you kind of get the break speed off you in that first game of the week, that kind of sets a bad tone for the rest of the week. So I feel like for G2, that Gen.G game is going to be the one that's most important. SSG currently sitting in that number 4 spot, plus 7-game differential. They've been looking really good, honestly, all Shift Summer League. Doesn't really feel like they've had a bad week by any stretch of the means, any of the 4 days. I mean, technically 4th where they're sitting right now, it is the lowest that they have been. Again, not an easy road when you talk about as far as for them. For SSG, you've got Dignitas, G2, and OG on day number 1, so on Tuesday. But then on Wednesday, things lighten up a little bit. You've got Incorrect, you've got Shopify, and then you've got POAB. So especially if for SSG, you can go 2-1 on Tuesday, you figure you're setting yourself a good tone for Wednesday, rounding things up, hopefully aiming for that top 4. Because again, you're trying to avoid being in that bottom spot as far as that 2nd through 4th, where these 4 teams who are tied at 8-4 currently sit. Of course, that is going to give us Shopify as our last remaining team left. They might have the most favorable run left, though, which is quite interesting with them being the team down in that 5 spot. But it's only because of how things line up, if you ask me, because they do have kind of like a 50-50 sort of schedule, but they can build some momentum on Tuesday, right? I mean, on Tuesday, you've got OG, then you've got POAB, then you've got Incorrect, 3 teams that you can realistically beat. Then you're only looking at, hey, let's go into Wednesday. We only need to win 1 series. And on Wednesday, yeah, it's a tough road. Gen.G, SSG, RMC. Arguably the 3 best teams that aren't called, or I shouldn't say arguably the 3 best teams that aren't called G2. Definitely the 3 best teams in NA right now that aren't called G2. So you're definitely getting best of both worlds when it comes to where they sit right now in that top 10 for the Shift Summer League, right? But it does feel like for Shopify, if you build up that momentum on Tuesday, you might stand a chance on Wednesday. But for Shopify, it really all lies on that Tuesday. If you walk out of Tuesday even at a 2-1, it feels like you got to walk away on Tuesday with a 3-0. Because at 2-1, you're already kind of questionable. If you're Shopify, you walk out with a 1-2, you're probably finishing in that 5th or 6th seed. Maybe even being the 1 team that does fall out of that playoff contention. It does feel like, though, for me, when we talk about NA, the top 6 is probably going to be the top 6 that makes playoffs. RMC, Gen.G, G2, SSG, Shopify, and Dignitas, right? It's just going to be more about what order they finish in for the playoffs itself. I don't know. If you guys think that OG has a really good chance, let me know down in those comments below, all right? And it's not that I'm discrediting him. Again, it's just kind of the way that the things break down. I just don't know if OG has what it takes, especially because the one team that they are going to have to worry about falling off is Dignitas. And honestly, I think Dignitas have been looking really, really good since that Zanil pickup. So you guys let me know down in those comments below. Let's go ahead and move on over to EU. Keep things rolling, baby. Over in EU, I don't want to say less competitive because I don't think that's a fair statement. It's just the competition in EU is in a different spot. Whereas in NA, the competition is kind of in that 2 through 5 region to figure out where they're going to seed. I mean, you've got Oxygen at 11-1 very firmly in that top spot. Remember, Oxygen technically started the Shift Summer League with a loss. So they've won 11 straight. They're looking phenomenal. I would even argue that 100% at 9-3. Probably solidified in the playoffs. I would even stay solidified into that top 4. And even with Jobless at 8-4 as well. And the big reason for that being is because there's a little bit of a fall off between them and even where Endpoint is at, right? Where Endpoint is sitting at, what, 6-6? You figure even for Jobless, they're going to have to go 2-4. And then Endpoint have, a better than average kind of turnout. You feel like those top 3 are probably pretty well solidified in the playoffs as well as into that top 4 spot. The big thing really, though, for Endpoint, even if they go 50%, you figure even that should be good enough for playoffs. But they're going to want to make sure they're securing that upper half of the bracket to make sure they do still have that second chance, right? An Endpoint, I mean, they have a decent schedule. You start with Resolve, who technically you lost to, but you should be able to beat. You should be able to make the adjustments off of that, right? 100% will be a tough matchup on Tuesday. And then from there, you'll play Fake GA, who I do believe they actually beat last time around. And then even their following day, they got Luna Galaxy. They've got Jobless. I mean, it feels like you should at least be able to go 50%, I think, for Endless. So that should be enough also to secure themselves a top 4, I do believe. Well, maybe not, because if Espartaco or Luna Galaxy is able to get up to like a 500 record, their game differential will probably be better than what Endpoints is sitting at. Endpoint is going to have to be concerned about that game differential. Only time will tell. Again, though, I do really feel like the top 4 are pretty well secured into playoffs. I would say the top 3 are secured into the upper bracket. Endpoint, they do kind of control their destiny. As far as when we look at, here for the last 2 spots, I mean, Espartaco had a huge bounce back last week. When we look at where they were sitting after week number 1, they were sitting down at 1-5. Now, Espartaco sits at 5-7. They're in that 5th spot. They'll have a tough start on Tuesday because they do have to play against Espartaco first. But then they can, round out the rest of the day with some momentum if you are Espartaco. You've got Fake GA, you've got Saudade. It feels like those are two teams that you should be able to walk away with dubs with, walk into that final day of league play. You start Wednesday as well with JJROX, but you do unfortunately finish things off in the Shift Summer League with games against 100% and Oxygen. So you got to get things going early. It feels like it feels like Tuesday is what's going to make or break Espartaco. If they are going to make the playoffs, it's because they have a fantastic Tuesday. If they don't perform on Tuesday, I just don't see a way they bounce back on Wednesday and are going to be able to still make it into the playoffs. So for them, it's all about early on in the week. For Luna Galaxy, on the other hand, they're kind of like the opposite end of that story, right? For Luna Galaxy, they were sitting at 4-2 after the first week, currently down at 5-7 after going 1-5 last week after the roster swap. They did split their series with 100%, so I think that has me feeling a little bit better going into the last 6 series, all being repeats. A lot of them of some series that they lost previously during the Shift Summer League, right? And they got a decent draw this week as well. Yeah, you start off with Oxygen. That's tough. But then you got Saudade. Then you've got JJROX. Then you've got Endpoint even, who is sitting at that 50%. I feel like the Endpoint game is really going to be the point where it lets you know if they are going to be able to turn things around, right? Because if they take the Endpoint series, where was I just at? The Endpoint series, you're able to carry that into Resolve and Fake GA as well. I think the start of Wednesday is going to be huge. We talk about for Luna Galaxy. Now, of course, that does take care of our bottom 2 teams currently. When it comes to those 6 that would be in the lower bracket, there are still 2 other teams that are tied with them. Fake GA and Saudade both sitting at that 5-7. GRIDSERVE Resolve also, within striking distance, kind of at 4-8. If you ask me, I think the way that they've looked, I just don't see it happening. I feel like if there's going to be a team that moves up into the top 6 in EU right now in the final week, it would be Fake GA or Saudade. And it's interesting, right? Because they play each other this week. Last time they played, Fake GA did win. They play each other in the second to last series on Wednesday. I don't know though. I feel like for them, for Saudade, it's really about Tuesday. You got to be able to take home the dub against Luna Galaxy. You do. You also should be able to carry that over into JJROX, right? Then you're able to take down Endpoint. You should be feeling plenty good when you get to Resolve, which would be like the last, we need this win for you to be able to make the playoffs. It's going to be tough for Saudade. I don't know if I see it happening. Again, I think between Fake GA and Saudade, I do believe Saudade is the team that would be able to move up into that top 6. But in a similar fashion to the way that we see in NA right now, I do think that we're going to see some iteration of this top 6 here for the playoffs. Luna Galaxy, Espartaco, Endpoint, Jobless, 100%, and Oxygen. Oxygen, I think, locks down the top spot. I even think the way 100% has been looking, they also lock down spot number 2. Behind that, it's wide open. Even Jobless right now sitting at 8-4. They could come out and go 1-5, and I wouldn't be surprised, and somehow end up in the 5 spot. I don't think that they do, but that's just what Jobless tends to do, right? They like to make things hard on themselves. I don't see a world there though where both Fake GA and Saudade make it up into the top 6. So I think it's either one or the other. But Shift Summer League looks like it's going to be a bang. Y'all already know we're going to be tuning into as much of it as we can over here on the channel, both Tuesday and Wednesday. As I said before, Tuesday, we got, or not Tuesday and Wednesday, for EU, it starts at 1 p.m. Eastern time. For NA, 7 p.m. Eastern time. We'll also be watching